Hello and welcome to Girlfriends Tea. We have girlfriends in the house, but first we're going to bring on co-host Tameka as we welcome our guest that we are excited to have, none other than Jackiem Joyner. Jackiem, welcome to Girlfriends Tea.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for bringing me on, Sabrina. How are you over there in my hometown, Virginia? You know I'm in LA now, so.
Yes, we're doing fine, and we're glad to have you here because you're 3 hours behind us. But we've got
Yes.
some wonderful girlfriends who also want to come in and just wave you on and let you know that you have a fan base that did not want to miss your interview. So who want
How
to
y'all
come?
doing?
Hi.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming through.
Oh, you're so very welcome. So I know that Tameka has some information to share before we get started.
Okay.
Hello, girlfriends. And just wanted to remind everyone about the second annual Girlfriends Tea Conference, which is going to be held on April 9th. Registration information is coming soon, so look for that on the Girlfriends Tea page and also Sabrina and my Facebook page. But I know you guys are here to see the famous jazz artist, Mr. Joyner, so I will pause there and looking forward to the interview, sir.
Awesome.
Awesome sauce. Well, Joaquin, of course I know about your accomplishments, but they include a number one jazz album, several Billboard topping hits, and a series of critically acclaimed books to your name. Concerning your books, you have loved science fiction and mystery thrillers ever since you were a child. Additionally, you have toured more than 38 countries and released 7 albums worldwide. Even more impressive is that you're in the 19th year of your career. So, congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's been what a journey it has been to, perform and tour and write music and do what I love, which is play the saxophone. Everyone knows me as a saxophone player. I became an author about three-quarters through my career. I think Zaria, which is my first novel, came out in 2014. I had no idea that I was going to find passion for writing stories. I know that I love to write my own music, and I've always been passionate about writing my own songs and performing my own songs. So the whole literature part of it was kind of an added bonus that I actually fell in love with doing. So thank you.
Oh, you're so very welcome. I want to remind everyone that you're a saxophonist, a flutist, and an author, as you said. But when I met you at the concert here in Norfolk, well, Portsmouth actually, it was during COVID-19. We were still in the pandemic where they weren't doing live concerts. So we know that COVID-19 greatly impacted everyone, especially at the onset in 2020. So at your live event in Portsmouth, you were also there with featured guests Marcus Anderson and Paul Taylor. But I want to ask about COVID-19 and the whole music industry. How did you pivot during COVID-19? Meaning, what did you turn your attention to as a result of doing live events being impacted?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, COVID-19 affected me as a performing artist because as long as I can remember, I had only done one show for the entire year of 2020, and I'm usually performing every weekend, so I was home a lot more, and I will say one of the good things that did happen was, well, two good things happened. I finished an EP called Journey of Passion, which was produced and composed right here in the studio during the pandemic. So I started it and finished it before the pandemic was over. And I was also able to finish my second novel, Minor Assassin, which it's really hard writing when you're touring and you're all over the place and trying to find time to finish a book, but it's a full length book of Saria and Minor Assassin. So I did find time to finish that and was very excited to put that out as well. So I did keep myself busy. I learned how to use the camera on YouTube as well, because you might see that I've recorded some videos and stuff for my practice room and everything. I didn't think I'd be ever doing that. So it definitely had a major effect, but I was able to kind of go deep inside of myself. And just when you're not touring and performing all the time, there's this sense of I don't know, it just allows you to kind of think about everything that's going on in your life and stuff, put things into perspective. So now that I'm going back on the road and going back on tour, I'm really excited about that. It's 2022 now, and I've already got a big tour schedule coming up. In fact, I'm going to be back there in Virginia too. I'm going to be in Norfolk in June, so be on the lookout for that. So, but I'm not gonna keep it going. But yes, like I said, the pandemic has had a positive effect in a lot of ways, but of course, obviously negative in many ways too.
I think I know about that. I'm going to be there. Is that the Jazz Legacy?
That is it. Yep, yep. That
Yes,
is the
yes.
one.
I'm going to be there at both events. I think there's one in June and one in the winter at the end
Mhm.
of the year. So, as you mentioned earlier in talking with us, you mentioned in Norfolk, many people don't know you were born in Norfolk, Virginia, but you are the son of Diane Joyner Terry, and I got to see her at the event at
Yes,
Brothers. She knows how to, she jams for her son now. She was getting down
yes,
with it along with
yes,
us. But you're
yes.
the son of Diane Joyner Terry, and your father's Jackie Smith, who was
Hmm.
a local bass guitar player known as the Raven. You were
Hmm.
raised by your mother in a single parent home, and your family moved from Norfolk to Syracuse, New York when
Hmm.
you were a teenager. And it was there that you were introduced to the saxophone.
That
So
is
you
right.
played both the saxophone and the flute. Was it love at first experience for you with the saxophone, or did it have to grow on you?
It's the saxophone came as a surprise. Actually, I was playing drums before we moved up to Syracuse, and I was playing in churches and different things like that. The spark for music came when I was 11 years old. And I remember my mom took us to a church called Living Word Tabernacle at the time. It was in Hampton, Virginia, and Bishop Michael Patterson was the pastor. And I remember just 11 years old seeing the choir sing, seeing the band play, and I was just really excited. I said, "Man, I really want to do something like that." And every day after service, I would go and bang on the drums, which was, really, really therapeutic for my 11-year-old self. But I remember starting high school, and I told my mom that I wanted to be in the high school band. And I thought I was going to be a drummer, because
A drummer.
I thought I was going to be a drummer. I was playing drums, throughout middle school. So I thought that was going to be my whole thing. And when my mother introduced me to the music teacher, and I said I wanted to play the drums, they said they already have enough drummers for the band. So they said, unfortunately, you can't play the drums because everybody wants to play the drums. So if you want to be in the jazz band, you're going to have to learn how to play something else. So he said, I'm willing to teach you, and you can choose whichever instrument that you want, as long as it's a brass instrument or a horn or a trumpet or something like that. So I said, okay, let's go over to the band closet with all of these instruments. The first thing I saw was a tuba. I was like, wow, who plays that? It's just a humongous thing. And then
Yes.
I saw the trumpet, and the trumpet, I was like, wow, I didn't know, only had 3 notes on it. I learned later that you could play all the notes on the trumpet. And then I saw the flutes, and I was like, I said to myself, I thought only girls played the flute. So I was like, I don't want to mess with that. And then I saw an instrument that had, I don't know, maybe about 1,000 buttons on it. It looked like it was made of gold. It was floating on a cloud. There was a halo over it, and there was a choir singing in the background, and all kinds of lights everywhere. And I said, "Teach me how to play that." And he said, "What is that?" He said, "Well, that, young sir, is a saxophone." I said, "I want to learn how to play the saxophone." He said, "Well, let's get started." And that's how I started playing the saxophone.
Amazing, because you took to it so well as if it was love at first experience. So isn't that amazing how you were able to pivot? Because I know about the drums now. I used to be a majorette in high school, and everybody loved the drummers.
Hmm. Hmm.
Everybody loved the drummers, and you know that. But
Yeah.
saxophone is hot. I love the saxophone. It really is. So we're going to take a listen to a portion of your song "Last Dance" featuring Peter White. I love that. I want you to know, and I can see the girlfriends clapping backstage. Let me tell you, I'm gonna be quite honest. I played that thing at least a dozen times. Love it, love it, love it. Of course, I played the full version as well. But and you can see it's not so much that you're playing, but you're passionate. You're into it. I mean, that's when the artist has reached the pinnacle of being in their zone and in their
Yes.
lane because you got to learn it first. You're just so busy
Yes.
trying to learn it, and then when you know it, and when you know that you know that you know, you're into it. And so I want to know what was the inspiration behind Last Dance? It
Yeah, Last Dance featuring Peter White, and Peter White. It's so interesting because that is the first single from Touch, which is the Grown and Sexy album that I put out in 2019, just before the pandemic. And I wanted to put together a record that really eases people's mind, puts them in that mindset of romance. So Last Dance was one of those tracks that really fit the bill, and Peter White playing on that actually kind of really brought the song to life. It was a fun song to play. It was a fun song to write, and it's so interesting because when I always send my music to people that I look up to, like Rick Braun or Gerald Albright or Peter White, and he really loved the track. He thought it was an amazing track, and he instantly played on it, and it became the first single. And that's off of Touch, the album Touch. And like I said, the whole album is it's like I said, it's one of those grown and sexy records, and I really it's one of my favorite albums actually because I was very gentle how I played the saxophone throughout the entire record, and it was fun to play. Again, like I said, fun to perform. And when I'm playing these songs live, I'm always into it. I'm always into feeling, just the feeling and the passion of playing the saxophone. But of course, you got to learn how to play the saxophone before you can get into the zone, kind of like you said.
Yes, you definitely have to get into the zone. But I also want to share that I also like Summer Nights where you were featured with Kevin Jackson. That's a good one too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That kind of came as a surprise because he sent me the track and told me to check it out and hear what it sounded like. And I said, okay, cool, yeah, man. Let's. And Kevin, he's played with me a couple of times as well. And I just went on ahead and recorded it and sent it back to him. He loved it, and he said he wants to make it his first single. So I was like, sure.
Of course, sure. Why not, right? Well, you mentioned some of your shows, the one coming up in June, I'll be there. But you have shows coming up February through June, so that's good to be busy. But a show in March was supposed to be with Nick Coleon
Mhm.
at the Lyman Center in Connecticut. And
Yes.
we were all saddened to hear of his passing away on New Year's Day.
Mhm.
You will be performing in April at Berkfest, where you and many other jazz legends will offer a salute to Nick. What
Mhm.
was it like to know him and work with him?
It's obviously really sad that Nick isn't with me because, I saw Nick just recently at the when we performed at the festival in Delaware, and we were chatting it up. We were having a great time on stage, and we always talk. I know Nick before I even really had a career. I remember meeting Nick in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Um, I was going there to perform with Marcus Johnson, and Marcus Johnson was telling me about this guitar player who's really amazing, and I got to hear him play. And my first experience seeing Nick Coleon, he was coming through the audience. I was on stage playing with Marcus Johnson, and then Nick Coleon was coming through the audience, and I was like, "Wow, who is this?" I think I was 22 at the time, and we instantly became friends. Instantly became friends. We recorded together. He recorded on a song that I wrote called "When You Smile." We always talk about music and other things. You know, I look at him. I know he's everybody's uncle, but Nick Colion was just such a force in the contemporary jazz scene, and it's such a hurtful thing that he's not with us. We had a concert together. We had a few shows actually together scheduled for 2022. Not just the Lyman Center. We were going to be a couple of other places, and so this came as a really big surprise. We're going to all miss Nick Colion. It's sad that I didn't get a chance to see him before he was taken, but we will most certainly remember Nick. And at the Berks Jazz Festival, we do have something that we're going to do. We're going to dedicate a show to him, and it's going to be Gerald Beasley is going to be performing, Jasmine Gint, Brian Simpson, myself, a couple of other artists, just to send that salute to Nick Colion.
My condolences to you and the jazz family, and of course all the fans who loved Ed Family. Nick Colion, he was the only smooth jazz artist with 5 number 1 hits from a single album, and that being 2016's The Journey.
Yep, yep.
Regarding Yes, regarding you and your talent, what a contrast from contemporary jazz to writing sci-fi book thrillers. However, it's not too far from your makeup, because in my research and following up on you, I found out that you entered the field of chemical engineering. That's deep, at William and Mary for a couple of years. But as you said, you got an offer to go on tour and you cashed in your chips and took a chance, and look at where you landed. I mean,
Ye-
amazing, amazing.
yes,
So
yes.
continuing with that, your book, Zarya,
hmm
the setting is planet Cygnus.
hmm
And so Zarya is only 15 years old, but her planet's fate lies in her hands. And she's on a quest to find her parents that she never knew. So when did the character Zarya first come to your mind?
Wow. Gosh, I started writing. I'm a huge critic of science fiction movies. I love science fiction movies, but I'm also a critic as well. So, and I can't remember the name of a movie that I watched that had the amazing graphics and CGI, but just a horrible storyline. And I said to myself, hey, maybe I should just write my own story. And the end result is Zarya. I had been touring a lot with Keiko Matsui and touring the world. And one of the things when you're touring is there's a lot of waiting time. Whether you're waiting at the airport, waiting for them to set up the sound system, waiting backstage, and we got to find something to do. And what I found to do was I just said start writing. I had never written anything before, and I just said, why not? And my imagination just took off with the story of Zarya. A couple of years later, I put out a full-length book called Zarya, and I didn't think that I was going to be an author. I was never planning on it, but when I found the passion of writing, it was just when you're writing stories, it's like you're in charge. It's like you can create whatever you want to create. Your mind is free to do whatever you want to do. So there was this sense of freedom with writing, that I found, and I just totally fell in love with it. And but I wanted to put out a novel that people would love, that would garner a lot of respect. So I went out and hired the best editors and everything else. I wanted to make sure my first novel was polished as possible. And the end result is a story of a young teenage girl who who's into coding and building things, and she doesn't know that her father was also a scientist for the planet, and that he went missing. She actually continued his work after finding after her grandmother took her to her parents' home, and she was able to log into his computer, and turns out their planet was in dire need of oxygen and other things. So she went on this whole quest to, one, find her parent, and two, finish up the work, because she already knew the science. She understood the science at 15. But the Zarya is set on a planet with drones and skyscrapers and humanoids and people with tails and ears and flying bots and stuff like that. So it's totally in the science fiction world. If you like Star Wars or Avatar with a lead teenage role, female, Zarya's the one for
Well, we're
you.
going to take a look at the promo for Zaria. And I did listen to that interview on Stephen King with the editors. And I also heard that I heard the interview, so you have a sense of humor because you had them chuckling on a few things. But let's take a look at the promo for Zaria. Pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. She's a heroine. So I came across an article. Speaking of, this goes with Zaria. I came across an article by Black Girl Nerds where a guest blogger wrote, "Today we are far from short of Black sci-fi authors that are blessing the bookshelves of public libraries and schools across the world. It isn't surprising to know that historically Black writers have been undermined and underrepresented. Diversity in publishing is lacking, but that doesn't mean it's not there."
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah. It's interesting because everyone knows me as a musician, as a performing artist, and generally they won't take you seriously as an author. you know, and so there was a lot of pushback in the early stages of releasing Zaria. What is this guy doing? What does he know about literature? Stuff like that. Until he was an Amazon bestseller. Zaria was, and it started to get a lot of respect in the industry of books. Like I said, including being on a Stephen King podcast. I was on a lot of other major podcasts as well, talking about Zaria. And I never really mention or talk about the idea of being an African American author, although I believe that that's extremely important that we have more African American authors writing and being inspired to write. I actually created a book club that I want people to go to. It's called Joyner Book Club, and it's joynerbookclub.com. And basically, I'm telling everybody everything they need to do to become an author, how to write, my writing process. And, it's kind of a resource for people that might want to, self-publish their book or find out how to write a book and different things like that. But I'm glad you brought that point up.
Oh, thank you. You're very welcome. I hope I got that right. JournalBookClub.com, correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, I put that up as a banner so that people will go to that. Black Panther did a lot for breaking the barrier of seeing a plethora of talented Black actors starring in a Marvel movie. I saw the movie 5 times in the theater. I took somebody with me each time. It helped our Black youth to see themselves as heroic and powerful in their gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Zaria is sold on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and on your website, and on many more sites.
Yes.
So you already mentioned about the youth, but anything in particular you're doing with introducing Zaria to the youth, especially to Black youth?
Yeah, well, actually, I am in the process of getting Zaria added to school libraries throughout the country, particularly even through the high school that I graduated from, Fowler High School, and also at schools in Norfolk and also down in Florida. So the next step with Zaria and other books that I put out is to make sure that they are in the school system, even middle school too, for the ones that can read or for the books that will match that. So I think it's important, and I hope to see all of this happen. In the meantime, I'm finishing Zaria book 2, which I'm writing every single day. As I'm also writing new music as well, and I have like a different time for writing music and writing my stories. I usually write my stories first thing in the morning because my mind seems to be a little bit more focused in the morning time. And then it gets a little crazier in the afternoon, which seems to work better for writing songs. I don't know why.
Well, hey, it works for you. It works for you because you're like some people say, you're doing the darn thing. You're doing the darn thing, Jackie. So additional sci-fi books. We had Zaria. We talked about that.
Mhm,
Include Minor Assassin, which is a
mhm,
book where the setting is Las Vegas.
mhm.
So share a bit about Minor Assassin, the plot, what's going on there.
Yeah, I had always thought that I would stick to the whole science fiction, flying drones, another new world, planets, and things like that. But Minor Assassin is different because it's more real world, and it's a young teenager who decides to take the law into his own hands to stop a human trafficking network in Las Vegas. And it all happens through tragedy because when he's 8 years old, there's a home invasion where they kidnap his sister and they take out his parents, and he's hiding in a pantry. Uh, that's the only thing that keeps him safe from the danger from the Chinese and Asian gang that actually came and brought harm to his life. A day later, after he finally decides to leave the pantry, the people that his parents work for want to save him, but they take him to Japan at 8 years old. He's an African American boy. He goes to Japan at 8 years old. He's the darkest person there. And all of a sudden, he's learning a new language and learning the culture of Japan. And they're teaching him how to use devices and how to fight and how to train and how to basically get revenge on those who harm his family. So a couple of years later, when he's 15, he comes back to Los Angeles, and I'm sorry, Las Vegas, and he wants to find those Asian gang people that brought harm to his family, and he's very hell bent on doing that. Turns out the detectives are trying to find out who's killing off the bad dudes in Las Vegas, and it turns out there's a 15-year-old boy that's doing this, but they can't catch him, so they follow him in order to follow the bad guys. So that's Minor Assassin.
Wow. Well, not quite minor. That's powerful stuff there. That's big stuff for a kid, a teenager.
It is big stuff for a
It's
kid
big
because
stuff.
it's one of it's a story that I would say I'm not sure if this would fit in the school library because it's the first story where it actually has violence, there's blood,
Yeah.
and there's martial arts and stuff like that. But it's a really an emotional story because it does deal with human trafficking, and the gang members are basically trading and selling human beings, and he wants to rescue his sister, and but he wants to do it in a violent kind of way. So. And look, I love Jet Li and I love all of that stuff. So, there you go.
There you go. Well, you've toured the world with your getting back to your first love with Marcus Miller, Ronnie Laws, George Duke, Najee, and others. I admire how musicians can tour and perform sometimes impromptu via
Mhm.
jam sessions. So
Yeah.
you can't think of jazz without picturing jam sessions. It's
Yep.
so exhilarating to see talented artists come together and bring the house down. That's what I like.
Yes.
We're just standing up clapping, that big crescendo at the end.
Yes.
So what were some of your most memorable? Well, give me one in the interest
Well,
of time. Give me one
I
memorable jam session.
I will say my first time performing with Marcus Miller was impromptu. In fact, Marcus Miller and George Duke and Paul Jackson Jr. were on stage, and then I come on stage. I think I was 26 at the time, and this is my first time performing with them impromptu. Jackiem, take a solo. That was it. and
Amazing.
later on, I went to host the jazz brunch at the cruise. This was the Soul Train cruise with George Duke, the late George Duke, and just having George Duke play my music, I was like, I can't believe he's playing my songs. That was just the only. I just couldn't get that out of my head when I was performing with George Duke. He was just an amazing person. He's always been an amazing force in the industry. So it was just such a big pleasure to perform with George Duke. Obviously, I performed with many others, Kirk Whalum, Najee. In fact, I remember Najee bringing me on stage. I was just hanging backstage while he was doing his show. I'm a 26-year-old. I was hanging backstage while he was doing his show, and I had my saxophone, and I was just playing. All of a sudden, these security guys come and run to me and they give me a microphone. They say, "Hey, you need to go on stage right now." I'm like, "What? Najee wants to bring you out."
I love it. I
And there
love
you
it.
go.
It
Najee
may
brought
not be good for you, but I love it because that energy impromptu is I admire y'all. I really do. I admire that ear to be able to jam to somebody. That means you know their music because you have to know their music because
you got it.
you'll be a fish out of water if you didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to bring on the beautiful co-host Tameka.
Hello, hello, hello. What a fantastic interview. Well, we do have two questions. The first question is going to be coming from Miss Cheryl Ward Kirkland. She cannot talk. She lost her voice, so I will ask it for her. But her question is, who is your favorite jazz artist? Although you're a jazz artist yourself, but who is your favorite jazz artist?
Wow. So I would say, gosh, I mean, I came up listening to so many artists. John Coltrane was one of the first saxophone players that I listened to, and I really wanted to learn his music, which is different than the kind of music that I play, which is smooth jazz and contemporary jazz. I later heard of Grover Washington Jr. I would say those are my two top. Grover Washington Jr. and well, then also there's Charlie Parker as well. I was learning a lot of Charlie Parker in my 10th and 11th grade years in high school. But honestly, there's a lot more.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We have a second question coming from Miss Tammy. I'm going to let her ask her question directly.
Hi, I'm such a fan. My father played the saxophone, and I heard your music and fell in love with it. Everybody knows your talents, but I have a question. What has been your greatest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
Wow. I had a lot of challenges. I mean, geez, it was crazy that a lot of people don't know this, but actually, when I was in college, for the first couple of months I was in college, I was actually living in my car for like 3 or 4 months after graduating high school. I moved back to Virginia, and I didn't even tell my grandmother. When she found out, she like popped me upside the head. She was like, "Boy, you could have came to the house. I had aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody in Virginia, and I didn't tell anybody that I was living in my car." I think I was 19 or 20 at the time. So, but I learned a lot about the real world and life and things like that. I just had a lot of pride. But it taught me a lot. That's one moment, but there's a lot of challenging moments. COVID-19, the whole pandemic was very challenging because obviously I wasn't able to perform on stage, which is what I love to do, and not being able to connect with the audience, which is what I love to do. It's pretty hard not to see people's faces when we're performing and things like that. So that was another big challenge.
Thank you so much. We do want to thank you for answering those questions. Of course, there are a lot more, but we're going to turn it back over to Mr. Rita.
Okay, all righty. We're pretty much winding it down, Jackiem, but we want to know what can we expect from you this year?
Well, I'm going to be on tour, so I'm very excited about that. I'm going to be hitting up Philadelphia for Unscripted series in February. I'll be in Seal Beach also in February. Of course, I'll be down in Florida. I'll be back in Virginia. I'll be in Mazatlan, Mexico. So make sure you guys go to my website, JackemJoyner.com, and you can find out, my tour schedule. Also, follow me on Instagram at Jackiem Joyner. I'm always posting things on there. Of course, I'm hoping to get book number 2 done with Zaria by March. So I'm excited about that. And I'm also continuing the writing on Minor Assassin and another series that I started called Time Lab, which is a really interesting story about 2 scientists, one from the past 2,000 years ago and a young knucklehead scientist from the present time in San Francisco, and they work together to build a time machine that no one believes. So, and that's a new series that I started. So all of that stuff you can find on my website, JackemJoyner.com. Can't wait to see you guys on tour. And
Well, outstanding. I'm going to bring in all of the girlfriends, co-host Tameka, Miss Cheryl, Tina, Tammy. Everybody's all excited. Debbie and Glenda and Stephanie. And I just want to thank especially Debbie again because Debbie is a huge jazz fan, way more than me. And I would have met you that night because we got to meet you at the after party
Yeah.
and all that. I wouldn't have met you that night if it were not for Debbie. Debbie is a huge fan, so thank you again. I told Alvin about this interview, Alvin Kills, so he said send me the recording as soon as it's done. But Jackiem, this has been excellent. It's been absolutely excellent. I applaud you.
Can I say something?
And I'm just so happy for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Stephanie was also one of the reasons that you met Jackiem, because we both were going to the concert together. Stephanie's right there.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. And so Sabrina had the opportunity to spend that evening with her in my absence. So thank you so much. And we love you so much, Jackiem. Thank you.
I think I love all you guys. And Sabrina, this has been amazing. And I love your show. Thanks for bringing me on. And I can't wait to see you again. And thanks for coming out the show. I'm glad we were able to connect.
Yes, and I'll see you in June. Thank you, girlfriends. But what do? Now, he's not a girl. He's a guy. We can't call him boyfriend. So we say, thank you, guy friend. Guy friend. We have a little chant where we say girlfriend, but you're clearly not a girl.
Yes.
So thank you, Jackiem. I'll follow up with you, everyone. And thank you for joining us for Girlfriends Tea with Jackiem Joyner.